It is October 6, 2023, and once again, this is Political Dharma with Alan Zundell. This week, I'm going to be talking about Cornel West and the Green Party once again, but I promised last week this episode would be something different. Well, it is different in the sense that rather than talking about Cornel West seeking the nomination of the Green Party to be president of the United States, I'm going to be talking about Cornel West leaving the Green Party to seek the nomination as an independent candidate, not a nomination, but seek the presidency as an independent candidate. I'm also going to be touching on Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is expected on Monday to announce an independent run for the presidency as well, leaving the Democratic primaries in order to do that. So I'm going to talk about these independent runs for the presidency and why I think they're not going to be successful in electing either of them, which has nothing to do with ballot access, actually. It has to do with the Electoral College, and I'll be getting into that later in the show. But I'd also like to say that this is different, I think, in a way that I had a little more time to prepare for the show, so I hope it's a little bit better put together. Not a lot of time, because Monday afternoon, we did turn in our signatures for the Star Voting campaign here in Eugene, Oregon, to use that form of voting for the first time anywhere in the world for a public election. We're still waiting for the elections officers to determine if we have enough valid signatures. But once we find that out, we'll know if we're going forward. That ended on late Monday. We're taking a pause. And then in the Green Party here in Oregon, I was intensely busy trying to create a reorganization with other people within the party. We were aiming at talking about this and passing something in our convention, which was a little over a week ago, I think. And that convention is over and done with. The bylaws didn't pass. So I think everyone is also taking a breather on that. More to say about my role in trying to reorganize the Green Party a little bit later as well. Let's get right to Cornel West, though. Yesterday morning in my email box, by the way, I remember saying a few episodes ago that Peter Dow, the new campaign manager of Cornel West, in trying to make a more professional campaign, is likely to be sending a lot more fundraising emails, and that has proven true. My email box has gotten some from the Cornel West just about every day in the last couple of weeks, asking for money for one thing or another, giving a little bit of detail about what Cornel is doing, speaking at the workers' strikes or whatever he happens to be doing, and then asking for money. All well and good. Don't have to give every time they ask for it. But he sent an email yesterday morning that I also attribute in some respects to the influence of Dow, which is that he had to say he was going to leave off seeking the Green Party nomination and seek the presidency as an independent candidate. Now, a couple of quotes particularly struck me, and you'll see them highlighted on your screen if you're watching this. First of all, he says he's seeking ballot access as an independent, unaffiliated with any political party. So there's like an anti-party slant to this, particularly the Green Party. So he wants to shed the Green Party. And then he goes on to say a little later, and you can see this on your screen highlighted as well, the best way to challenge the entrenched system is by focusing 100% on the people, not on the intricacies of internal party dynamics. Now, I found that statement vague, as I think you might agree. So it left a lot of room open for speculation as to what exactly was the problem he is having in seeking the nomination of the Green Party, what kind of intricacies were causing him difficulties. And also it raised the question of what he thinks there's not going to be intricacies to getting on the ballot in enough states to run a credible campaign. The laws for getting on the ballot as an independent candidate are also very complex and intricate. So I don't see where they're going to be able to focus 100% of their energy on like reaching out and mass campaign rallies. They're still going to have to focus resources on getting on the ballot. So there had to be something a little more to this. This morning, I did see a recording of a live interview that Cornel did yesterday evening on Tim Black TV on YouTube. I thought it was a very good interview and helped explain a lot of his views. I put together a couple of very short clips on this that are pertinent to the things I've been talking about. So it's a good interview, but I'm just taking a couple to give you a flavor of why he's leaving the Green Party and how he would address concerns like the one I have. All right, so let's look at the first couple of clips.
The real challenge is going to be, how do you attempt to keep the movement-like character of a campaign that goes far beyond just an individual or person like myself, but do it in such a way that I'm free of any party encumbrances. So I don't have to worry about all of the internal struggles. I don't have to worry about even the nomination. I don't have to worry about going to all the different Green Party events and so forth. That's a lot of time, a lot of energy. I want to focus on the people, their suffering, their struggles, their needs, their cares, and try to do it in such a way that it's improvisational. What do I mean by that? That I'm free to say and do what I feel is in my heart and soul as it connects to this particular calling and cause without any kind of party affiliation. And that's very important. I just had a wonderful talk with Brother Ralph Nader. Nader told me to do this from the very beginning. He said, Brother West, you really should run as an independent because I've been through it. And I don't want you to have to go through this. You got to keep in mind, it's easier to get on the ballot with independent as opposed to party. Fewer signatures, less money in certain states. All these states are different, but in many states.
So there he got not real detail, but he did give a sense of why he's leaving the Green Party, what exactly he saw as the problem. And I would break that down into three areas that I think you could glean from those clips, but also was peppered throughout other parts of the interview with Tim Black. First of all, he talked about party encumbrances and wanting to reach outward rather than look inward at internal party dynamics. And here I have a good sense of what he's talking about, because in the Green Party, there has been a lot of effort to try to figure out why the Green Party has a bad reputation as being badly organized, and if there's things we can do inside to fix it. And also just running a political party, selecting a nominee takes some kind of process, right? You have to, of the various people who may want to run for your nomination, you have to have a process for getting them qualified and having delegates selected for a national convention, or however you're going to do this, to choose who's going to be the nominee. There's just intricacies involved in running a political party, right? So I get the sense that what he's saying is that he really wants to be out talking to the people, the voters in general, running a kind of a general election campaign rather than inward looking, that it would keep him off the campaign trail, in short, that he would be in spending time within the Green Party trying to get himself familiar to Greens in various states, reassure them that he's a good candidate for them, that his values fit theirs, and all that, running around talking to small groups of Greens around the country, much rather be talking to larger sets of voters and running a campaign that's outward facing. He's a good public speaker. I'm not sure he's too good at internal party maneuvering and politicking like that, because that's what this is politics. And he's not a politician. Some people think it's a good thing. I think it's good to have a little bit of both to run a credible or any kind of credible campaign. Second thing, he mentioned Ralph Nader. Now here people may be confused. Well, what was Ralph Nader sour on the Green Party because of the 2000 election, which, if you remember from your history or maybe from your own personal experience, was the one in which Al Gore, the Democratic candidate, former vice president to Bill Clinton, got more popular votes than George Bush. But because he lost in one particular area, because he didn't get enough votes in one particular area of Florida, he lost the Electoral College votes in that state, which went to George Bush. And then there was a dispute over that, and it went from the state courts up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they made what I think is a very bad decision to give the election, essentially give the election over to Bush. So was there sour feelings from Nader about that? No, I think he's referring to his 2004 campaign run for the presidency. Now, Nader ran 3 times for president, maybe 4 times when I think about it. The first time was just in a couple of states giving a couple of speeches. So it wasn't a serious thing. He just wanted to raise some issues and get a little publicity for them. The time he really ran was in 1996 with the Green Party, helping to build the Green Party up. And in 2000, same thing. He ran a more serious campaign, better coordinated with the Green Party. They did a lot of work to get ballot access in a lot of the states, and he did fairly well for a non-major party candidate in terms of popular vote, not real high. Obviously, most third-party candidates or independent candidates don't get much at all. But in 2004, there was tension between Nader and the Green Party. Nader ran again as president. for president. And he did try to talk to the Green Party people about running in as their candidate. But there's two types of problems. One was the backlash over the spoiler accusation against Nader in the 2000 election, that he had spoiled the election in Florida for Al Gore giving him the electoral votes that eventually led to the George W. Bush presidency. So there was a lot of backlash against the Green Party. They built up a lot during the campaign. Ralph Nader helped them to do that. But after the campaign, both Nader and the Green Party received a lot of backlash that they were responsible for the election of George W. Bush. Discouraged some people, drove some people out of the party. Other people got a little gun shy about that. So there was the talk about running a safe states campaign, which meant that rather than running full-fledged in every state that you could, you would limit yourself to those states that you weren't liable to turn the election because it was a close election between the Democrat and Republican. In other words, run in places where either it's sure that the Democrat or Republican was going to win, so you didn't have to worry about your influence on which of those two won that particular state. So there was a sense that they should run a more safe state strategy. They didn't actually do that, but they did something close, was let each state decide whether they wanted a presidential candidate to run in that state. No, Nader said he wanted to run a full-fledged campaign just like he did in 2000. His was more the go gung-ho, go ahead, don't be deterred by accusations of spoiler, even though they try to smear you like they smeared him. Gave him a lot of economic hardship, not for him personally necessarily, but for his organizations. He had a lot of organizations doing good work in this country, but donors, money, big donors who were Democrat affiliated stopped giving to those. So he did have a lot of repercussions from that, but he wanted to run a full-fledged campaign. That was one difference they had. The other one was simply that Nader was not a Green Party candidate. He was not involved in the party. He was not pledging himself to their particular values or their whatever platform they had at that time. He simply said he wanted to speak for himself. And if they corresponded, as both sides felt there was a lot of correspondence between what Nader was saying and the Green Party's positions, insofar as that was good. But Nader still wanted to speak for himself and not for a party. And there were people in the Green Party who felt like, okay, now we built up into a party. We have a lot of parties in the various states. What we really need is candidates to run on our own platform, to make people familiar with it, to have our own candidates. Thank you, Ralph Nader, for helping build the party. But, if you're not really totally in sync with us, we'd rather have our own candidates. So there was that threat as well. And I think that's what Cornel is referring to as the latter, that he wants to be able to speak from his own heart, his own soul, his own mind, and not feel constrained about having to represent the Green Party. Is the things I'm saying totally in sync with the Green Party? Do I have to think about how this will sound to them? He wants to be able to speak out fully without worrying about whether or not the Green Party finds that amenable or what they think about it, even though I think there would be a lot of overlap in those positions. So the Nader comments kind of clarified for me what he's thinking. And finally, he says it's easier to get on the ballot as an independent than it is to get on the ballot, to get a third party on the ballot. And since the Green Party at present only is on the ballot in 18 states, you'd had a fight to get into a lot of other states. It may be true that it's easier to get on the ballot as an independent in at least some states, maybe a lot of states. I haven't checked into it, but I suspect there's some truth in that. But it's going to be hard to get on the ballot in any state, whether you're a third party or an independent, because if you are any kind of threat to the Democratic Party, they're going to throw a lot of money and lawyers at you to keep you off the ballot in any state where you are perceived to be a possible threat. So it's not going to be easy going, no matter whether you're a third party candidate or you're an independent candidate trying to get on the ballot. But as I said earlier, it's not the ballot access that is the real obstacle toward independent or third party candidates. But let me look at one more clip from Tim Black's show, because in my previous podcast, what I said was the most important thing about his run was not that he had any chance of winning, because I don't think he has, and not that he's going to raise good issues and get people excited, because I think that has two sides. You can raise issues and get people excited just by going around giving speeches for somebody else or on your own without running for office, writing a book, or doing whatever, doing some kind of newsworthy event. There's a lot of ways to get a message out, as I think some movie producer once said, if you want to send a message, go to Western Union, telegraph company. Some of you younger folks may not know what Western Union is unless you just get money from it. Anyway, I do have a penchant for getting off track. to some degree. Anyway, my complaint was that he's not going to win. So the main reason for running would be to help build a party that can last beyond a single campaign. You got to leave behind an institution that can further contest elections and bring up other people, other candidates for other offices as well, to leave a political party or some kind of political organization that is electorally oriented, leave them in a better position to actually field candidates and win elections. That's the only reason that I can see for running a campaign when you're not one of the major party candidates, is to build a electorally oriented organization that's going to last beyond your campaign. That's why I thought it was important he was running with the Green Party, and that's why I was disappointed when he left that. So let's hear what he had to say. Now, Tim Black asked the question, I think, very well.
Many people are hoping that we're going to build something with this campaign that will endure and serve to be a catalyst or the infrastructure for a movement. People say, hey, Bernie had an opportunity. He put all these people together, and then things kind of went to the side after he didn't get the nomination. Do you have plans for developing, building this out as you do all this hard work, going state to state and getting all, setting up volunteers? Have you thought that far yet, or am I a little bit ahead of the game?
I think that I'd have to wait and see, because there's no doubt, and Anahita always reminds me of this, there's no doubt that the post-election period is going to be a very, very important one, especially if we have the kind of strong impact that we're planning to have. Now, this is all assuming we don't win. We fight to win, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But I also don't think that it's just a matter of creating new organizations. I think that there's a number of local organizations and regional organizations that could immensely benefit from the kind of thing that one is doing. Because I don't think that the one person has to be tied to just a new institution and organization in order to be the ultimate outcome. No, it's a variety of different outcomes and impacts. But we just want a stronger, courageous, visionary, willing to live and die left. That's what we need.
So Dr. West's response to the question about building an organization through his campaigning had to do with building local and regional organizations and not necessarily some one big organization. And I think there's some point to that. Certainly you can add extra energy to all the various organizations that you try to get engaged in the campaign or that you call out during the campaign, and give speeches to, and all the rest. Said, put the spotlight on them a little bit. Certainly you can translate that energy of a campaign into various organizations. But the ones he was talking about, and he's also talking about changing culture, like in the churches, bringing them more to the left, what he and I would both think was more in line with the actual historical Jesus than with the kind of right-wing Christianity we have in this country today. But he was trying to make cultural changes as well. That's all well and good, but none of this has to do with electoral organizations that are oriented towards getting people on a ballot and electing them to office. And that's what we're lacking on the left in this country. Every electorally oriented organization is in some way or other compromised by our election system. You have the Democratic Party, which is actively and has always tried to keep leftists off of its ballot. You have the Democratic Socialists of America, who are trying to use the Democratic Party primaries to get on the ballot and having success in some areas, but in most areas of the country, it's really a hard road to follow. And you're still not building an independent organization. You're just helping to lead people into the Democratic Party, which could be a dead end. I think certainly looks that way often. Or you have the Green Party. It's, the only alternative electoral institutions in this country towards the left is the Democratic Socialist of America and the Green Party. And the Green Party has all the problems of a third party, getting ballot access and keeping ballot access, and then getting attention, overcoming the electoral system's biases towards the plurality winner situation where you only have to get the most votes, not a majority, all that kind of stuff, lack of preference voting, lack of proportional representation. So all those problems. The things West was talking about are not electoral organizations, and that's what's missing on the left. Now, if you think there is a strategy that doesn't involve some form of electoral activity, I think you're mistaken. I don't know what that would be. I don't see any room for that. I think just abandoning the electoral arena means your left-wing movement is going to be more vulnerable to state repression than it would be otherwise, because ordinary people who think the method to change, the legitimate method to change, is to go through elections, will see you as people who don't want to bother to get democratic consensus behind your ideas, but try to push them on people from outside by one means or another that is forced on people. So I don't see a strategy for the left other than a strategy that includes an electoral dimension to it. It may not be the primary thing that makes a difference, but I think it has to be there for a number of reasons. And the only ones we have are, as I said, the Democratic Socialist America and the Green Party. So you got to have that. Now, let me talk now about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as well, because a week ago on, last Monday, September 29th, he made an announcement that he was going to give another announcement. That announcement that he announced is going to be this coming Monday in Philadelphia. He's going to be talking about, his movement and where the path forward is. Widely suspected that he's going to talk about an independent run for the presidency and leave the Democratic primaries. At first, there was some speculation about him being the candidate of the Libertarian Party. I don't think that was an entirely good fit on either side, but possibly that's what he was considering. I guess he was in talks with somebody in the Libertarian Party. But now people are more speculating he's going to go for an independent run, very similar to Cornel West with the same kind of problems. Only, of course, he has the Kennedy name, a lot more media attention from that, and he's raising a lot of money because he's willing to accept money from big money donors as long as they're on his side. And he's not really of the left. He's kind of towards the progressive side to some degree on some issues, but he's certainly not socialist by any stretch of the imagination. So let's hear a couple of pieces of the announcement that he made last week, Friday, a week ago today, about his coming thing.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to be in Philadelphia on October 9th to make a major announcement at the very birthplace of our nation. I'm not going to tell you right now exactly what that announcement will be. I can say, though, that if you've been waiting to come to one of my public events, this will be the one to come to. So how are we going to win against the established Washington interests? It's not through playing the game by the corrupt rules that the corrupt powers and the vested interests have rigged to keep us all in their thrall. Instead, we're going to have to rewrite the assumptions and change the habits of American politics. We're going to tap into a mighty surge of people power to reclaim an honest, peaceful, just, and prosperous America. So I am inviting you to join me in Philadelphia on October 9th. There I'll share with you our path to the White House and how we can all participate in healing our nation.
All right, so I'll be interested in what he has to say, especially if he's talking about building an alternative party. I'd like to see what his vision for that is. But if it's just another independent run, I'd say he's in the same position as Cornel West, in that neither one of them is going to win, no matter what they think. Very slim possibility. I would never say it's impossible, but it's highly unlikely, not because it's difficult to get ballot access. It's not difficult to get ballot access. As an independent candidate, you can get started. I think the earliest state is Texas, and that's sometime in May of next year. I did have it written down, but I ripped up that part of my notes. Anyway, getting on the ballot as an independent is a possibility. Other people have done it. Ross Perot has done it most recently, and Ralph Nader did it in 2004 in a lot of states. The real problem is the Electoral College. Now, remember, to become elected president, you have to have electoral votes. You have to go through the Electoral College. If getting on the ballot is like the middle rung of your video game you're playing, and you got to get through that to get to the next level, the highest level is getting by the Electoral College dilemma. The Electoral College, you have to have more than half the electoral votes in the Electoral College in order to be elected president. Now, what does that mean? I put up a picture here where you can see that each state, and there's a number on this map, each state has a number, and that number represents how many electoral votes that state has. The electoral vote for a state is based on the number of senators that each state has. That is, each of them gets at least 2, plus the number of representatives, which would mean the smallest population states have 3 electoral votes, 2 for the senators, 1 for their 1 congressional representative in the House of Representatives. And the largest state, like California, would have a lot of electoral votes. I think it's around, 54 for California. So each state has a number of electoral votes. In almost all of those states in fact, all of them do virtually, award their electoral votes by a plurality election. That is, you have to get the most votes of all the candidates, and you win all the electoral votes in that state. It's not proportionally divided. You have to come in first in enough states to get enough electoral votes to get a majority of electoral votes. And if you look at that map again, you'll see that most states lean red or lean blue. Some of them very deep red or deep blue. And there's only a handful of states in which they're even close. But it doesn't really show whether in any of those states independents do better than others, because usually they don't do well at all. Ross Perot did better than anybody else in the last 30 years or so. I think he got around 18% of the popular vote, but he didn't get the electoral vote in any state because none of those states was he the first place candidate. He may come in high, he may even come in second place. I don't remember if he did. I doubt it. But even if he did, he had to come in first place to get that state's electoral votes. Now, looking at the map again, we see even if you add together the states with the biggest number of electoral votes, which would be California with 54, Texas with 40, Florida with 30, New York with 28, and Pennsylvania with 19, still that only adds up to 171 electoral votes, which is 99 electoral votes short of a majority. So it's next to impossible, very close to impossible, let's say, for a independent or third-party candidate to get through that hurdle of the Electoral College. You have to come in first in a lot of states in order to pile up enough electoral votes to win the election. Now, it would be possible to deny the Electoral College vote, to deny a majority to one of the major party candidates. And what would happen in that case? Say, if it was a very close election between the Democrat and Republican, which it may be, and their electoral vote was very close. That doesn't happen too often, by the way. Let's look at this graphic now. And what you can see is that in the last 30 years or so, there's really only 2 elections in which the electoral vote was very close. Last time around, 2020, the margin in the electoral votes between the Democrat and the Republican was 74. That is, Joe Biden got 74 more electoral votes than Donald Trump did. And in 2016, the margin was 77 electoral votes. In 2012, 126 was the margin. 2008, it was 192. The only 2, and you go back as far as 1996 when Ross Perot last ran, and the difference between them was 220 electoral votes. That was Bill Clinton versus the first George Bush and Ross Perot in the mix. The only 2 that were close was in 2000 and 2004. The first in 2000, of course, was Al Gore versus George W. Bush. The second was George W. Bush, the incumbent, against John Kerry, the Democrat. So it was the 2000 election that was especially close. If we had an election that was that close, where there's a difference of just 5 electoral votes between the Democrat and Republican candidate, now it's possible that in 1 or 2 states, if an independent candidate could come in first, which is hard enough in itself, but if they did that, if they came in first in 1 or 2 states, they could deny in a close election the victory to one of the major party candidates. But then what happens? According to the Constitution of the United States, if nobody gets a majority of the Electoral College votes, then the decision goes to the House of Representatives, which each state's delegation gets 1 vote, so 1 vote per state, to determine who is going to be the president and vice president of the United States. And you know what's going to happen? You're going to have the Democrats voting for the Democratic delegations from those states voting for the Democrat, and you're going to have the Republicans voting for the Republicans. So it's going to be one or the other. And in most of the states, I keep going back to it, it's going to be hard to get in first place, because most people who do vote are voters who are strongly identified with one of the major parties, the Republicans or Democrats. They're the ones most likely to get out and vote. You have the weak-leaning people who may get out to vote if they are motivated enough by fear of one or the other major party, so they vote for the opposite. They're not going to vote for an independent because they're worried about, electing the lesser of two evils. And then you have a lot of independents, but they're all over the map in terms of what they're looking for in a candidate. They're not all looking for the same thing. And also because most independents have already given up on voting. They don't vote very often. They're the least likely to vote. And having an exciting candidate is not necessarily going to bring out that many people. So very hard to do. A further wrinkle on this, just to add in one other thing, is that if it does go to the House of Representatives, because the Speaker of the House last Tuesday, Kevin McCarthy, was removed from his position. We now we have an interim, an acting Speaker of the House, but they're going to come back next week on Wednesday to try to vote for a new speaker, which means the Republicans, which have a very slight majority in the House of Representatives, are going to try to choose somebody that they can all agree on so they can get beyond the Democrats' united opposition to anybody they propose as speaker. In talk of who was going to unify that coalition within the House so they could choose the speaker as a unified caucus, the name of Donald Trump came up, which makes some sense in a way. Let's hear what Donald Trump has to say about the possibility of him being appointed Speaker of the House.
Would you take the job? A lot of people have asked me about it. I'm focused. We're leading. I don't know you. I'm sure you don't read too much in the papers. But we're leading by like 50 points for president. My focus is totally on that. If I can help them during the process, I would do it. But we have some great people in the Republican Party that could do a great job as Speaker.
So just to increase your nightmares, there's a slight possibility. I don't think he's going to become Speaker. I don't think they choose him, even though he would be the best one probably to unify the party. Worst case scenario would be that some independent candidate denies major parties the electoral vote. It goes to the House of Representatives. They have a Republican majority, which they now have. And Trump is the Speaker of the House and also the Republican candidate for the presidency. How fair you think that process is going to be? So that's like, can things get any more bizarre? What I do want to say, though, is for myself, I am going to continue to work within the Green Party to try to improve its internal organization. At the same time, I think the West candidacy is worth supporting. I think I said early on that my support for him, when I got that email yesterday morning, went from 100% down to 0%. Well, after listening to him and thinking about it further, I thought, let's see how this emerges. I'm not going to vote for either Biden or Trump. Even if neither Kennedy or West is going to build another electoral institution, we can still build on the ones we have. Maybe the Green Party will still want to get involved in West's campaign, even though he is not their official nominee. Maybe they will even make him their nominee in particular states. I'm not sure what the rules are about that. I know some states here in the United States did choose a different candidate for president than the one recommended at the Green Party National Convention. And also, whatever I was going to say right there about it. Oh, and the Democratic Socialists of America, maybe they will want to get involved in supporting the campaign of a truly socialist candidate like Cornel West. By truly, I don't mean any ideological purity. I simply mean that he is a self-professed socialist, even a Marxist, Christian Marxist. So maybe they will get behind that, and it'll help them build capacity to run campaigns as well, give people in the DSA more experience running campaigns, presidential elections, and all that, and maybe help build up the DSA and the Green Party as well, simply by them getting behind this. So we'll see what next week brings. I'm going to keep plugging along. Maybe next week I'll certainly report on Robert F. Kennedy's announcement and have some thoughts about that. Don't know what else I'm going to do. Maybe an interview somewhere down the line. Do come back and like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that stuff that we on YouTube always tell you to do. If you like this, do that as well. I certainly appreciate your time and attention. That's it for this week. Bye.
With ease I see the chains are breaking. We gained our focus, the moves we're making will prove to determine our self-worth as a passenger on this vehicle Earth.